Hello everyone, today we are discussing Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breaches DLC Ruin, including the 2 optional endings and how Roxy may become our savior in the next part. Remember to like, sub, and if you're feeling generous, super thanks and join the channel is available for that extra boost. Ruins opens up with a brand new protagonist, a young girl named Casey who receives a message from Gregory asking to come to the Pizzaplex. The entire place has been abandoned with graffiti everywhere, warning people to stay away. Undeterred, Casey heads deeper, finding a flashlight and a Roxy walkie-talkie, with Gregory telling Casey he's trapped after being grabbed. Gregory tells Casey he's at Roxy's Racers on the other side of the facility. Heading up the elevator, Casey is almost crushed and finds an old kitchen with Chica, now a burnt robot. Locating a Faz wrench, Casey makes known that her father once used one of these and bypasses the circus within the Pizzaplex. Downstairs in the maintenance areas, Casey is attacked by a broken Monty, now just a torso, and tossed into the drainage system. Now at the golf course, Casey is provided a Vanny mask by a Maskbot. Clearly a more advanced form of security, Casey puts it on and is connected to the security system called the Vanny Network, and a transponder is injected into her. With this mask, we see how Vanny was able to travel through the Pizzaplex so quickly and why the animatronics didn't attack her. With Casey, she's able to bypass objects but cannot interact with real-world objects while the mask is on, only AR-linked objects. All of this is told through the AI called Halby. Casey heads deeper into Monty's golf course to find hidden items and wet floor signs with weird glowing eyes that can be shut down using the AR world. Finding an old camera system, Casey lures Monty away using a speaker that can mimic her voice. Casey needs to head through a security door, but it's electrified. Casey is told by Gregory to turn off security nodes to her confusion. Casey finds out what Gregory is talking about. Security nodes in the way of giant bunnies that require points of significance to be shut down, and ending with a match the science minigame. Getting to the second and third security node, Casey is attacked by a giant digital rabbit that is sending a signal to Monty to attack Casey. Taking off the mask allows Casey to evade capture, but she needs it in order to interact with the security nodes. Casey is almost killed by Monty, but thanks to luck, she makes it out alive and heads to the maintenance area, shutting off security nodes as Monty hunts her. Trapped in the control room, Casey makes use of the Vanny network to create a digital hole that allows her to pass through a solid wall. It's true insanity, and it shows how Vanny was able to find Gregory throughout the Pizzaplex. Now at the daycare, Casey is nearly captured by Moon, now taking over the body since the area is all dark, but scared away thanks to Casey's flashlight. Casey meets with Sun, who is holding on barely, asking Casey to reboot him, but needs to turn on all the generators first to weaken Moon. Casey successfully does this, allowing Sun and Moon to merge together, creating Eclipse. However, Sun thanks Casey when she is taken out of the daycare by Eclipse, showing that he's still inside the body alongside with Moon. Casey avoids more animatronics and heads through the theater, but unfortunately finds herself back at Monty's golf course, but on the catwalks. Gregory tells Casey to shut off the security nodes to redirect the carts to the maintenance areas. Casey finds the entire area has been destroyed, highlighting the aftermath of Gregory's fight with Monty. Casey avoids slipping and showcases her shooting skills, eventually learning she can teleport using digital doors thanks to the Vanny network, highlighting once again how Vanny was able to get through the Pizzaplex so effectively. Eventually, she is sucked into an area where the entity almost grabs her, but it's saved thanks to Gregory and updating Helpy with a signal jammer. With the security nodes destroyed, Casey makes it to the maintenance area and finally asks Gregory how he is doing what he's doing and keeping track of her, only for him to avoid the question. Now in the kitchen, Casey restarts the power using her Faz wrench, but indirectly brings Chica into the area. The entity activates a jammer, preventing Casey from accessing the Vanny network. Heading to shut it down, the entity uses a Mr. Cupcake crane to knock her off the platform and into Chica's path. Avoiding Chica, Cassie can access an optional maintenance closet with Chica merchandise and an arcade cabinet that contains an Asteroids minigame. If completed, you get a replacement for Chica's broken voice box that can be used later for an optional mission. Attempted to leave, Chica gives chase, but almost crushed by falling debris after Casey avoids her. Casey shuts down the jammer and regains access to the Vanny network, only to find herself in the server room with the Vanny mask now fully attached to her and unable to remove it because Helpy says this is the safest way to traverse the area. Casey's reassured that she's safe from the entity and is told by Helpy to deactivate more nodes to restore power to the rest of the Pizzaplex. Casey does this, but the entity appears anyway. Avoiding the monster, Casey finally makes it to Roxy's raceways and finds Roxy crying over her lost eyes. Gregory calls out to Casey using the speakers, strangely using the same voice pattern that he has been doing this entire time, causing Roxy to sprint towards him in a rage. Concerned, Casey gives chase, but a security node blocks her way. While breaking the nodes, we are shown why Casey loves the Pizzaplex, highlighting that she had a close bond with Roxy, who is shown doing makeup similar to her, and Gregory, who consoled her during a difficult time, which we'll find out more about later. With the final node destroyed, Casey sees Chica headed into the bathroom and collapsing. If you have the voice box, you can repair it here. No idea why this is an option, and it doesn't do anything for the rest of the DLC, but likely this is to set precedence for the next DLC, but nevertheless, it's optional. Casey unlocks the node and heads into the maintenance tunnel, now slightly flooded, only for Monty to appear. Casey uses her Faz Wrench to reactivate the power and shock Monty. Whether he's dead or alive, it remains to be unseen. Now at the raceway, Casey is unable to get a signal and heads deeper into the area. Finding Roxy's hunting for Gregory, but without her eyes, uses Gregory's voice to lure Roxy to smash through breakable doors, similar to the main campaign. While opening the door to Roxy's raceway, Roxy attacks Casey believing that she is Gregory, only for Roxy to recognize Casey's voice and let go. Roxy similarly going through a rebooting process similar to Eclipse while hearing Casey's voice. Now in a panic, Casey realizes she is in over her head and believes they need to call the police, but Gregory convinces her not to as he needs her help right now. Helpy tells Casey she needs to shut down the remaining security nodes at Bonnie's Bowl to save Gregory. Inside, Casey finds a bunch of active Music Man toys, which despite being less than half Casey's size will kill you in one hit. Seriously, a baby can break these things. They are literally just walking fragile toys. Anyway, here you'll find another rare sight if you've been collecting the floor signs and deactivating them. Glamrock Bonnie. Behind this billboard, you'll find a bunch of floor bots surrounded and destroy animatronic, with its eyes glowing similar to how the floor bots have been glowing. When you shut them all down, Bonnie's eyes will also stop glowing, confirming that these bots are the ones spreading the virus that the entity is using to control all the animatronics since Gregory's first outing. With the nodes now destroyed, Casey heads into the vent and finds herself into a makeshift room with the princess machine from the core campaign destroyed, and if you use the Vanny network, you'll see a sword was piercing through it. Likely the entity did this. Now at Fazbear Blaster, Casey destroys another security node and finds Freddy, but he shouldn't be here. Labeled prototype on his left foot, it's likely a different model which attacks Casey. Fleeing for her life, Casey turns off the signal jammer and uses the Vanny mask to hide, but is attacked by another Music Man toy. Which I should also note, the Vanny mask is why the animatronics were not attacking her. It allowed her to remain hidden, and this basically confirms it. Finally, almost to Gregory, he tells her that Roxy is the final security node, which makes no sense, but Casey just complies with Gregory. Casey finds Roxy strangely trapped under a forklift, but isn't hostile anymore. Instead, she's docile, revealing she remembers Casey, and the reason they're so close is that no one showed up to her birthday party, but Roxy made her day special. Likely Gregory was there too, sharing in her sympathy. Despite their sharing a profound bond, Casey shuts down Roxy and cries all the way down to where Gregory is located. Heading deeper into the sinkhole, Casey finds herself at the original Freddy Fazbear's pizzeria, where Gregory and Freddy fought Burntrap. If you collected enough Faz tokens from the optional collectibles, you can get bonus information from the Candy Cadet robot, revealing what's to come. At the area where Gregory fought Burntrap, she deactivates the security and the entity appears to be sucked into the server, unable to escape wherever it came from. Unlocking the door and destroying a concrete barrier where Gregory is apparently hiding, you can hear Gregory calling out for her. Just before the robot attacks, Roxy appears to save Casey, telling her to run. The real Gregory then somehow contacts Casey, despite being, underground, alerting her that this was a trick, but most importantly, instead of running, just stands there and starts talking to him. Like, what the hell? Roxy's fighting for her life, tells you to run, and you're just standing here. Roxy unfortunately loses the fight and the robot gives chase, with Gregory somehow able to navigate Casey through the tunnels. At the elevator, Gregory tells Casey that the thing was trapped down for a very long time, but she freed it and he cannot allow it to find them, apologizing before the elevator drops. In the end credits, we learn that Roxy survived the fight and calls out to Casey. Now, let's talk about the extra endings. There are 2 in total, and we'll discuss them before we foster theories about what part 2 could possibly be about. Now, there are 2 extra endings we'll discuss before discussing the details of what part 2 could contain. The first is a strange ending where Gregory, Vanessa, and Freddy are in a field eating ice cream. I think this is the darkest ending, where Casey is killed, but her final moments are pleasant videos playing in the Vanny network before Mimic finally kills her, Mimic being the robot that's chasing her. The other is possibly the more good ending, where if you unlock very specific doors, you can open the scooper room. Here, the robot, again called the Mimic, will dress in an alternate costume, and Casey can kill it by luring it into this room. I'll allow it to play out to show you what happens. So what exactly happened here? First off, I'm going to keep the explanation only to this DLC. The Five Nights at Freddy's franchise is expansive. It has video games, books, coloring books, so much stuff that goes into the lore that it's best to try and keep it contained to this DLC. I know that's a little short-sighted, but if I were to explain everything, chances are I would get some things wrong and we would be here for hours. So let's just talk about this DLC. Something called the Mimic used Gregory's voice, likely learned it from the events of Security Breach, and lured Casey into the Pizzaplex. After all, the room that it was being held was also the room where Gregory fought Burntrap with Freddy, so that's likely where it learned its voice. So why Casey? Well, first off, Casey has a very strong bond with Gregory since no one showed up to her birthday party, and Gregory was one of the few people who were there, likely to develop a very strong bond with her. And she also had an extensive knowledge of the Pizzaplex. We learned that her father was working at the Pizzaplex, so likely she did stick around with him and had an extraordinary knowledge of the layout, because she was able to instantly determine where Roxy's raceways were and use the tools such as the Fraz wrench. It seems very simple of how you use it, but nevertheless she knows what it is and she knows how to use it, so she was the perfect patsy for this entire situation. As for the security notes, likely the entity was trying to take control of the Mimic, as it did with the other animatronics, but it was trapped behind that wall and it couldn't get to it. We see that disabling the security notes weakened the entity, allowing it to walk free without risk of being taken over. We also see throughout the game that disabling the floor signs actually does weaken the entity, because when you walk into Glamrock Bonnie's room, you see that the robot's eyes are glowing with the 4 floor signs surrounding it in a similar glow. But once you shut down all the floor signs that are looking at Glamrock Bonnie, its eyes stop glowing as well. Despite being completely broken, it's clear that these floor signs are spreading the entity's virus to the other animatronics, and by shutting it down and hard rebooting them, it allows them to go back to their original program. We saw this with Eclipse and Roxy. Roxy is a special case since hearing Casey triggered the reboot, freeing her from the entity, which is likely why she was under the forklift. Remember, when she grabbed Casey, she said, "I error." Likely this was what triggered the reboot. The entity then took over the forklift and drove it on top of Roxy, similar to how it tried to run over Casey with the go-kart. I know someone's going to argue that the Mimic is the one who attacked Roxy, but since the Mimic was Gregory and Helpy, they didn't have control over the facility like the entity did, and only had rare times where they could directly interact through the Vanny network through hacking, as we saw in the catwalks. The Mimic was trying to help Casey avoid the entity, so likely the two are at odds, but Roxy served as a threat to both them to the entity because it wasn't affected with the virus anymore and couldn't control it, and to the mimic because Roxy's core programming is to protect kids at all costs, which is why she followed Casey to the Pizzaplex and fought the mimic in an attempt to get Casey away to safety. But why did Freddy attack you? As I stated, the developers really wanted you to see that prototype word on its foot, meaning that this is a different Freddy, and likely the one from the core game is with Gregory and Vanessa, which is likely where Gregory stated we instead of just him. He's likely with Vanessa and with Freddy right now. As for part 2, I would argue that Roxy and Casey will team up similar to Gregory and Freddy to escape the facility. Casey serving as Roxy's eyes and guiding her through breakable doors, which she is known for doing. This will likely lead to a final fight between the mimic and the rest of the animatronics, which generally sounds pretty awesome. It could also be like a 2-on-2 fight, like with Roxy and Chica, because we do fix Chica's voice box, and it could be between Monty and the mimic because Monty has been seen as a constant threat. Then again, we did shock Monty, so he could come back in a completely rebooted state and help you in some way. And that brings us to the end of this video. Tell me, what do you think part 2 of Ruin will be in your own theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day. Goodbye.